What's up, everybody? I'm your host, Big Love, and this is Big Love's Breakdown. Last night was Monday Night Raw, live from Chi-Town, Chicago. You know, Raws after pay-per-views are normally pretty good, and this one was, it had its moments. We got to see the addition of 4 new matches for Wrestlemania, at least on the Raw side. Or if they're not actually the matches, there's the setup for the matches that we're going to get. I'll get into that a little later. So let me go ahead and give you my thoughts and recap on what happened last night on Raw. So Raw last night starts out with Chris Jericho. And it's kind of noteworthy here that Chris Jericho actually made his debut in the WWF in 1999 in Chicago. Jericho talks about Kevin Owens' betrayal towards him and how last night he got a measure of revenge on Kevin Owens by costing him the Universal Championship. And then he calls out Kevin Owens. Now this whole time, Jericho looks a little dejected. He looks both pissed and hurt at the same time and a little confused. Kevin Owens comes out and kind of evades the question of why did he turn his back on Jericho. Jericho finally interrupts Kevin Owens and goes, "Tell me why. Tell me why you turned your back on your best friend." Kevin Owens says, "The truth of the matter is you were never my best friend. I used you because you were gullible. Triple H told me I was going to need help to keep this title, and you seemed like the perfect person to do it because you were experienced, smart, you've been in this position before, and above all else, you were gullible." Jericho, still looking very dejected at this point, says, "Hey, last night was just the start of costing you your Universal Championship was just the beginning, because you and me, we have a long winding road to WrestleMania." Kevin Owens says, "Well, you put your US title up and you got it." Jericho, of course, agrees to this. I just want to add something here because Kevin Owens seemed like he wasn't really concerned about getting a Universal Championship rematch. This was a really weird, skewed kind of view on the situation. Obviously, Goldberg's not going to give him a rematch before Mania because at Mania he's fighting Brock Lesnar. So, I get the point on this, but Jericho cost him the Universal title, so he wants to take his title as if it matters. There's so much more to this storyline and so much more to this whole intrigue between the two that I don't see why the title was even mentioned at this point. So Jericho says, "We got 4 weeks until Mania. Why don't we do something tonight?" So Kevin Owens goes out to the ring and they start fighting. A couple seconds later, Samoa Joe teleports into the ring. I'm kidding about that, but I swear Joe has these moments where he just randomly is there. Kevin Owens and Samoa Joe are beating down Chris Jericho before Sami Zayn comes out with a chair. They get the better of Sami Zayn for a moment before Jericho recovers and lays both Samoa Joe and Kevin Owens out, or at least sends them running out the ring. Then we get Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens in a match. Both Joe and Chris Jericho are barred from ringside here. This was a good, solid match. Kevin Owens pulled off some maneuvers that we haven't seen him use that often or in a while. Kevin Owens picks up the win. Kind of overkill a little bit. He uses 2 pop-up power bombs and a couple maneuvers in between the two to get the pin. We then are told that we're going to get Rich Swann getting his rematch that he hasn't had for the Cruiserweight Championship against Neville. First, we see an Austin Aries package. I love these things. Austin Aries also throws really good jokes in it, like, "Did you check out my package? Isn't it a great package?" Austin Aries, it's an amazing package. Once again, Neville pulls off a great Cruiserweight title defense. The Cruiserweights did a great job here again. This match was intense. Both men were throwing each other into the barricade. It was hard hitting. Neville normally is pretty intense, and Rich Swann amped up his intensity in this match as well. This match went everywhere around ringside and was just marvelous to watch. At one point, Rich Swann does a swanton off the top rope onto the outside on the Neville and pretty much lands on his feet. Rich Swann is an amazing athlete, and I think he deserves way more credit and way more recognition than he probably gets. Man, Neville took some intense moves from Rich Swann, and don't get me wrong, he delivered some himself, including a superplex off the top rope. This match was really back and forth and amazing to watch. Neville hits the superplex and then gets the Rings of Saturn on Rich Swann before Rich Swann taps. There's really no other option when you get put in the Rings of Saturn but to tap. Both of your arms are locked up. So now after the match, an even better surprise. Neville is interviewed by Austin Aries in the middle of the ring, and the crowd's going crazy for Austin. And Neville goes on about how he's the best and nobody's his equal. Nobody in this division can stand up to him. And Austin kind of hints around like, nobody? You can't think of one person. And the crowd's going crazy for him. And Neville goes, you can't possibly be that naive to think you can hang with the king of the cruiserweights. And Austin Aries says, well, I have one more question for you, Neville. It's more of a statement. And he hits Neville. Neville retreats from the ring, and Austin Aries looks like he's ready to be back in competition. And I'm guessing we're going to see Austin Aries versus Neville, maybe at WrestleMania. Fingers crossed for that one. Austin Aries, it's an amazing package. We then have Enzo and Cass walking backstage, and they run into Cesaro and Sheamus. They have an altercation back and forth where they're basically just trading insults. Enzo calls Cesaro pepperoni nipples or something. I don't know why you would call another man pepperoni nipples, but okay. Goldberg comes out to basically celebrate his Universal Championship victory. Last night, Chicago was kind of booing Goldberg. It was probably borderline 50-50, if not a little more. I'm now wondering if the Goldberg chants are dubbed in his track, his music, entrance music, because they did not seem very pro Goldberg last night, and I think it's basically because what I've been saying, we as the universe don't want to see part-timers as champs because it takes away from the value of the championship. Paul Heyman comes out and announces that Brock Lesnar's here tonight, so they kind of saunter to the ring slowly and meticulously before Brock Lesnar gets in the ring and faces off with Goldberg. You know, I love Paul Heyman and I love his promos, but this kind of gets just repetitive and redundant at this point because he says the same thing. Goldberg, you're gonna be faced with the beast, and this and that, and it's the same thing, the same spiel you've probably heard a million times. If you heard the Survivor Series promos or any of that, you get it. So then Paul Heyman manages to get somewhere along the backside of Goldberg before he actually calls Goldberg Brock's bitch. And Goldberg kind of turns around before Brock Lesnar hits him with the F5. This was kind of cool in a way, I guess, because I don't think Goldberg's actually taken a bump since his return back in October, November. We then have Enzo and Cass challenging the Club, Carl Anderson and Luke Gallows for the tag titles. I didn't pay too much attention to this match because I kind of figured Cesaro and Sheamus would come out and somehow cost Enzo and Cass the match or interrupt the match, and they did. They came out in the middle of the match. Enzo goes for a crossbody outside the ring or a suicide dive and accidentally knocks Cesaro's coffee over. Cesaro attacks Enzo, accidentally hits one of the members of the Club. It just becomes a giant brawl. In the back, Enzo, Cass, Sheamus, and Cesaro are still bickering back and forth. Mick Foley says, stop it. Next week, Enzo, Cass versus Sheamus, Cesaro, #1 contender match to see who faces the Club at WrestleMania for the tag titles. We then get Akira Tozawa versus Arya Daivari. Quick little match. Akira Tozawa hits the snap German suplex, calls out Brian Kendrick. Brian Kendrick comes out and says, I'll give you your answer tomorrow. The only thing I'm thinking here is you can only have 2 cruiserweight matches on Raw. That's it. That was the second one. So I kind of figured we weren't going to get anything out of this. So we'll see what happens later tonight when it comes to that. So then the New Day comes out with their pop cycle. It's basically a bike with an ice cream storage thing on it, and it has like New Day stuff all over it. I'm telling you what, man, if we don't get New Day ice cream out of all this, I'm going to be very pissed. I might even burn this shirt because they've been hyping this too much. They faced the Shining Stars. Not This match was probably what, like 2 minutes. Anyway, New Day wins with the Midnight Hour, and crossing fingers for ice cream. You better give us ice cream. So then Mick Foley's in the ring and he invites out Bayley. But Mick Foley asks her the hard question about Sasha Banks. He doesn't beat around the bush in this, and she doesn't have a real answer here. She just knows that it was kind of wrong. You know, she's a very morally conscious person. So then Mick Foley says, "Hey, who are you gonna fight at Mania?" Then Sasha Banks' music hits. Sasha Banks seemed kind of edgy here. She wasn't acting as a heel, but she kind of seemed like she was a little full of herself in a way here. She basically says, "Hey, you and I have talked about this, Bayley. You and I wanted to headline WrestleMania, so let's make it happen." And Mick Foley seems like he's pretty much ready to make this official before Charlotte comes out. And Charlotte does have a claim here because Sasha Banks did get involved pretty hardcore last night, whether you like it or not. She does have a claim here. Before Mick Foley can basically deny her rematch, Stephanie comes out and says, "No, Charlotte's getting her rematch." And Mick Foley argues to have Sasha Banks involved in this because she deserves it after the war she had with Charlotte last year and all the great matches that they put on. So Stephanie agrees, but the kicker here is it's going to be Charlotte versus Bayley for the title at WrestleMania. But Sasha's going to wrestle Bayley tonight, and if Sasha wins, she'll be inserted into the match and it'll become a triple threat match. So we get Bayley versus Sasha Banks with Charlotte on commentary. This match served a purpose to kind of show a little dissension and kind of like separation between them two because they're kind of having a hard time like wanting to fight each other because they're such good friends, but they both know what's on the line. Bayley can have a one-on-one with Charlotte if she wins, and Sasha gets her WrestleMania opportunity. So it was kind of a conflicting mindset here for both women. Charlotte then eventually comes to ringside and basically helps Sasha Banks win the match. Sasha now is inserted in the Women's Championship match, or the Raw Women's Championship match at WrestleMania. It's going to be a triple threat match. I thought Nia Jax was going to be inserted in here somehow. She wasn't even on the program last night. Charlotte ends up getting in the ring and giving both Sasha and Bayley a big boot before standing tall in the middle of the ring. So then we get a Seth Rollins recap. So I'll just recap this really quickly for you. Last week I was sick and I didn't get a chance to review Raw or recap Raw for you. Seth Rollins gets interviewed by Corey Graves, who's one of the commentators, in the middle of the ring, a sit-down interview. Seth Rollins walks out to the ring with crutches, and his leg seems really bad. He's asked the question if he's going to be at Mania, and he kind of half-heartedly says no, he doesn't think he will be. Triple H emerges with Samoa Joe on the other side and says, "You better stay home. You better not come to WrestleMania or I'll put you away." The weird thing here was he's like, "Don't you come to WrestleMania and call me out, Seth." Why would you say that? It's like should have been one of the things not to say. Like he should have just been like, "I don't want to see you at WrestleMania." That other part is just unnecessary to me. That almost guarantees that he's going to come out there and call you out now. Like you kind of leak the script to us in a way. So then Seth Rollins gets heated and says, "Triple H, I will be at WrestleMania." And they show Seth Rollins' rehab. So then Triple H has a satellite interview where he's basically bloviating about how good WWE's medical staff is. And it's kind of funny. I think it's kind of throwing some shade at Chicago because CM Punk has or had that lawsuit against the medical staff at WWE, so he's really like hyping it up that WWE's medical staff is great, and basically says if Seth Rollins wants to ignore the medical staff's advice and come to WrestleMania, that's on him. They can only help him put so much. So it's just basically him throwing shade on both CM Punk in a way and Seth Rollins, which makes sense because last week The Rock called CM Punk from the ring. So I think Triple H is salivating at any opportunity to take a couple jabs at both Chicago and CM Punk for that matter. So we're probably going to get Seth Rollins and Triple H in some capacity. I don't know if it'll be an official match, but we're going to see these two at least duke it out. We then get an Emma promo thing. You would think that Emma could just come out this week or next week and be like, okay, I'm back to Emma, I changed my clothes. We then get Samoa Joe and Chris Jericho, which I was expecting to be a better match, but seeing the time, I knew we weren't going to get the type of match I thought we could have. Basically, these two go back and forth before they end up outside the ring. Samoa Joe puts Jericho to sleep, or at least puts him in the Coquina clutch for a long amount of time. He waits until the ref gets to about the 8.5, 9 count before he slides back in the ring. Jericho gets counted out. Chicago was not happy about this, and I don't blame them. So Samoa Joe wins by countout, and then he rolls Jericho back in the ring. And Jericho was kind of playing possum, it seemed like, because he hits him with a code breaker. Joe backs out of the ring, and, you know, Jericho stands tall here. So then Braun Strowman comes out to the ring, and he basically calls out Roman Reigns. Now, Roman Reigns' entrance music hits for probably a second or less, and then it turns into The Undertaker's music, and The Undertaker slowly walks out. The crowd's chanting holy shit the whole time, and Braun Strowman and Taker have a stare-off before Braun Strowman backs off. Now all of a sudden Braun Strowman is a little girl, or a wimp, or for lack of a better term, a bitch. Why in the world would he call out Roman Reigns and then run away from Taker? Like, it's just, like I said in my Fastlane recap video, Braun Strowman's build is going to be dictated on what you do with him the next couple weeks to see if this Roman Reigns loss really mattered or not. This doesn't help him. He backs out of the ring and goes to the crowd. Like, now all of a sudden Braun Strowman isn't a man or isn't a beast. He's scared of people. I mean, I know it's The Undertaker, but come on, man. Perfect time to give him a rub with somebody, even if it's just for a second and a quick segment. So then Roman Reigns comes out and has a stare-off with Taker and says, "This isn't your yard anymore, Taker. It's mine." Taker just looks at him, looks at the sign at WrestleMania, and then chokeslams him. Corey Graves makes the comment that we're going to find out whose yard it is at WrestleMania. Why is WWE doing stuff like this? They don't give us a middle or anything, so just because Undertaker comes out there and looks at Roman, chokeslams him, and looks at the WrestleMania sign, it's officially a match. There's no content here except for what happened at the Royal Rumble. There's nothing, no middle ground. Like, it's like two pieces of bread. It's like, as long as we know the start and the end, it's cool. So this is another match added for WrestleMania. WWE has a real issue not putting any like middle part or leaving a lot of pieces out of stories lately. I'm getting kind of sick of it because I think part of the great story is the journey in the story, and a lot of these stories haven't been fully put together. Now, the Festival of Friendship and the Jericho and Kevin Owens thing, that was done beautifully. No problems here, but the Randy Orton, Bray Wyatt, this situation, there's a couple situations that just don't have a middle ground, and it kind of irks me a little bit because it's like they're trying to hurry up and put a WrestleMania card together when you've probably had months to do this. So Raw was okay. It had its up and down moments. It was great to see The Undertaker. The first hour was really good. The Kevin Owens, Chris Jericho segment, the Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn match, the Cruiserweight Championship, Austin Aries. That stuff was amazing. It really lulled off for about an hour there with all the tag team stuff, and I was really out of it at that point because, honestly, a lot of that stuff, who cares? We kind of knew what was going to happen in a lot of that. Tell me in the comments below what you thought of Raw last night. Like this video, subscribe to my channel, and share this with all your friends and on all of social media. Follow me on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. I live tweet during Raw, SmackDown, and WWE pay-per-views and NXT specials, so if you want to tweet with me or interact with me on Twitter, I'll put the links to all my social media accounts in the description below. Until next time, this is Big Love's Breakdown. I got 2 words for you. Stay tuned.